The People's Pharmacy podcast is supported in part by CocoVia. CocoVia cocoflavanols support both cardiovascular health and cognitive function by promoting healthy blood flow, transporting oxygen and nutrients to vital organs and muscles, including your heart and brain.
CocoVia now comes in an even more concentrated formula with 450 milligrams of cocoflavanols, 5 times more than the leading dark chocolate bar and 15 times more than the leading cocoa powder.
CocoVia has a proprietary process that preserves cocoflavanols at the highest levels, and the product undergoes rigorous testing at every stage, which allows them to guarantee the highest level of cocoflavanols per serving and to provide the purest, highest quality product possible.
People's Pharmacy listeners can now try CocoVia for 25% off by using the code Peoples25 at cocavia.com. That's COCOAVIA.com. Chronic pain impairs the quality of your life. Drugs to treat a bad back or arthritic joints have side effects. What about yoga? This is the People's Pharmacy with Terry and Joe Graydon.
When you think of yoga, do you imagine slender young people who are flexible and fit? You may assume you can't do yoga because of pain or movement limitations, yet yoga has a great deal to offer people who are trying to stay active and age gracefully.
Carol Krukoff is a yoga therapist who's been adapting yoga teaching for people who live with pain. She's found many ways for people to use mindful yoga practices to ease their chronic pain.
Coming up on the People's Pharmacy, your questions about how yoga can help ease pain. Welcome to the People's Pharmacy. I'm Terry Graydon. I'm a medical anthropologist.
And I'm Joe Graydon. I'm a pharmacologist. We know that coronavirus has captured everyone's attention this week. There are now over 100,000 cases worldwide, and it's spreading rapidly in the U.S. The last count, 17 deaths and 338 cases. South by Southwest in Austin, Texas was canceled. Lots of businesses are encouraging people to work from home. Concerts and sporting events are being called off.
Well, you know, there is a lot we don't know still about the coronavirus, COVID-19, and we are learning, but it causes a lot of stress. People are understandably, very worried about this situation. Today, we're going to focus on how mindful yoga can be helpful in stressful times like these.
Our guest today is Carol Krukoff. She is a yoga therapist at Duke Integrative Medicine and co-director of the Integrative Yoga for Seniors professional trainings. Carol has designed to help yoga instructors safely adapt the practice to older bodies, minds, and spirits. She's an award-winning journalist who was founding editor of the health section of the Washington Post. She's written a number of books about yoga. The latest is Relax into Yoga for Chronic Pain, an 8-week mindful yoga workbook for finding relief and resilience. Welcome back to the People's Pharmacy, Carol.
Thank you. I'm delighted to be here.
Carol, one of the things that we noticed on Relax into Yoga for Chronic Pain was throughout the book, you stress the helpfulness of mindful yoga for dealing with stress. How can yoga help us at a time when the entire nation is basically vibrating with fear and concern?
Yoga can be a very powerful means of dealing with stress for many reasons. And I do want to say that I'm co-author of that book with Jim and Kimberly Carson. They've done work they created a program called Mindful Yoga. So I do want to credit them for that, of course. One of the most powerful tools that we have in yoga is the breath. And the breath is always with us. It's right under our nose. And when we turn our attention to the breath and we pay attention to the sensations of the breath, we slow our breath, it has profound physiological components that are very stress relieving, can lower heart rate and blood pressure, reduce muscle tension, bring us into this present moment. Stress tends to be when we're worried about something or we're ruminating on something, when we're in the future and the past. When we're in the state of yoga, we are in this moment. And in this moment, generally, things are just fine.
We invite you to join the conversation. Do you have any experience with yoga? What have you done, and what has it done for you? Please tell us your story by calling 888-472-3366.
Yeah, that's right.
You can email us, radio@peoplespharmacy.com. The number again to share your story, 888-472-3366. Now, Carol, I think a lot of people have a perception of those who practice yoga as very young, very fit, wearing all the appropriate equipment, whatever that may be. And I think a lot of people like me feel that, well, we're just not flexible enough or thin enough or something enough. You've flipped the image of yoga. Can you explain that, please?
You know, the statistics are really very interesting. Did you know that 1/3 of yoga practitioners are over age 60?
Wow.
Didn't know that.
That was a study done by Yoga Journal and the Yoga Alliance a couple years ago. So there might even be more over 60. But there is that impression that you have to be young and fit and bendy. You have to be able to sit on the floor and cross your legs, stand on your head, do all these twisty poses. That is absolutely not what yoga is about. There's only one thing you need to be able to do to practice yoga.
And that is?
Breathe.
Well, I think most of us are breathing.
If you're breathing, you're in. If you're breathing, you're in.
But, when you say breathe, I think most people just take breathing for granted.
Yeah.
And when we're stressed, but we don't, it's like, why should we think about breathing? It just happens.
That's such a good point. I'm glad you brought that up. Breathing is the only physiologic function that's under two forms of control. It's under involuntary control. We don't have to think about it to breathe. Thank goodness. Our bodies will breathe. But we can take voluntary control of our breath. And when we take control of our breath, as I was saying before, by noticing it, by slowing it down, it triggers a cascade of really important physiologic changes. That's the relaxation response. And yes, we're all breathing, but many of us are not breathing optimally. Many of us are doing that stress breathing that you were just up in the chest. And what we teach in yoga is a diaphragmatic breath, sometimes called a yoga belly breath. The oxygen doesn't really go into the belly, but when you fill your lungs completely, so the air goes all the way down to the lowest portion of the lungs, where the oxygen exchange is most efficient. The belly will kind of poof out and swell. And that's really kind of the magic, that slow diaphragmatic breathing. And that can be used in so many circumstances. I've had students tell me that, when I can't sleep at night, I do that 3-part breath. And the next thing I know, it's morning. I've fallen asleep. Or when the boss comes in and starts to holler, I can notice my breath. I can slow my breath. It's, I think, probably the single biggest tool in the yoga toolkit that can be most helpful.
And it's always there.
Right under your nose.
Okay.
You can't control your heart rate. Well,
except by slowing your breath and relaxing.
Mm-hmm. And of course, you can control your heart rate if you see a blue light in the mirror and you were going about 70 miles an hour in a 50-mile-an-hour zone. But it's not something you have control over. It's something that your body reacts to when there is that stress. But as you point out, breathing, you can control it. I'm curious what some of the benefits are of controlling your breath and controlling your stress.
Well, the benefits of yoga in general are quite vast. Improving general health and well-being, reducing stress. In terms of low back pain and neck pain, there's a great deal of research that supports the efficacy of yoga's benefits for those conditions. improving mental health, improving balance. So when you look at PubMed, which is the National Institute of Health repository for studies, and you put in the word yoga, I did this morning just to check, you will find more than 5,000 studies looking at yoga's efficacy. And if you go to clinicaltrials.gov, there are now more than 700 ongoing clinical trials looking at yoga's benefits for a variety of health conditions.
So there's real science here.
There's real science, and it's exploding.
888-472-3366 is the number if you'd like to join the conversation. Rick in Tampa, Florida, welcome to the People's Pharmacy. Your experience?
Hi. Thank you for taking my call. I'm just as a wonderful show as always. But this morning in particular, I wanted to call in because for the past 5 decades, I have been working with a whole variety of different types of individuals, people with developmental disabilities, people with post-acute traumatic brain injuries, people with psychiatric disorders, lots of different kinds of folks. And in that work, one of the techniques that I have employed most successfully with tremendous outcomes is deep breathing. When I work with even people with developmental disabilities, for example, I tell them, if you get real upset, because a lot of these people I've worked with have dangerous behaviors, physical aggression, property destruction, self-injurious behavior, and so forth. At any rate, I tell them when they become very upset, I give them another thing to do, which is to take deep breaths. And I show them how to do that. And when I do that, it becomes a wonderful self-control technique that they learn, calms them down, and it gives them something else more positive to do rather than engage in their dangerous behaviors. So I have decades of experience of employing this technique successfully with a variety of individuals, and I wanted to thank you and your guest again for this wonderful comment you're making this morning and sharing this information with people.
Well, Rick, thank you very much for your call. We really appreciate it. We are coming up on a break, but when we come back, we'll ask Carol to comment on Rick's observations.
Well, this idea...
She has time to do that now?
You could do that right now.
Good.
Because this idea of breathing, that it could have such an impact on overall behavior and psychological stress seems a little bit strange to people.
Well, it's powerful. The breath really is the link between the body and the mind. Sometimes we talk about the breath as the thread that sews together the body and the mind. And when we're focused on our breathing, it brings us into this present moment, which is mindfulness. And as we know, and we're learning more and more, mindfulness is a powerful tool when you're dealing with stress, when you're dealing with unwanted emotions.
Well, we're going to take a break shortly, but when we come back, we're going to talk about pain because there are a lot of people, tens of millions of people are in pain. Excuse me. In fact, the opioids, hydrocodone, oxycodone, used to be some of the most prescribed drugs in America. And now, of course, we're a little bit worried about opioids for good reason. And so we need alternatives. But the over-the-counter pain meds, they have a lot of side effects. So we're going to find out what role yoga can have in combating pain.
We're talking today with Carol Krukoff. She is a yoga therapist at Duke Integrative Medicine and co-author of Relax into Yoga for Chronic Pain, an 8-week mindful yoga workbook for finding relief and resilience.
After the break, we're going to find out about postures. Is yoga more than its postures?
We'll find out why mindful yoga can help you ride the waves to pain relief.
If you practice yoga, tell us why you do it. If you've never tried yoga, tell us what's holding you back. Our lines are open at 888-472-3366. If our lines are full, you can email us, radio@peoplespharmacy.com.
You're listening to The People's Pharmacy with Joe and Terry Graydon.
The People's Pharmacy podcast is sponsored in part by Kaya Biotics. KAYA Biotics offers the first probiotics which are both certified organic and hypoallergenic.
All probiotics are produced in Germany under laboratory conditions with high-quality ingredients and under strict regulatory oversight.
The 3 available formulas are created for very specific purposes, such as strengthening the immune system, fighting yeast infections, and helping with weight loss.
To learn more about Kaya Biotics probiotics and the important topic of gut health, you can visit their website, KayaBiotics.com. That's Kaya Biotics.com. Use the discount code PEOPLE for $10 off your first purchase.
Welcome back to the People's Pharmacy. I'm Joe Graydon.
And I'm Terry Graydon. The People's Pharmacy is brought to you in part by Verizana, an analytical laboratory providing home health tests for hormones, gut health, and the microbiome. Online at verisana.com.
And by CocoVia, maker of high-potency cocoflavanol supplements that support cognitive and cardiovascular health. More information at cocovia.com.
Today we're talking about how mindful yoga can help you manage stress and chronic pain. Have you tried this? Give us a call at 888-472-3366, or if the lines are full and it looks like they might be, send us an email, radio@peoplespharmacy.com.
Our guest is Carol Krukoff, yoga therapist at Duke Integrative Medicine and co-author of Relax into Yoga for Chronic Pain, an 8-week mindful yoga workbook for finding relief and resilience.
Carol, what is chronic pain, and how can mindful yoga help?
So chronic pain, chronic or persistent pain, is defined as pain that has lasted for longer than 3 to 6 months. And what the neuroscience is showing about chronic pain is that it's quite different from acute pain. And much of what we think about pain, it's very different when it's chronic pain.
Well, let's just dig a little deeper. You hit your thumb with a hammer. That's acute.
That's acute pain. And pain is a warning signal, a really important warning signal. Ouch, I got to get rid of that hammer. I got to get my hand off the hot stove. That's very important. And we tend to think that chronic pain is the same as acute. But what we've learned looking at the neuroscience is that over time, when we've had pain that's hung on and hung on and hung on, our brain is just trying to do its best to protect us. And it creates this wiring. It's kind of a faulty wiring. So we become hypersensitized. It's like your car alarm going off when a feather just touches it. So it's how mindful yoga can be very, very helpful is it brings us into awareness of what's going on in our body, of what's going on in our mind, what's going on in our emotions, because all of these have powerful impacts on our perception of pain.
Well, we've certainly learned that our reliance on opioids, but even over-the-counter non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs like Aleve or Advil, they have a downside. They can give us stomach ulcers, they can raise our blood pressure, they can affect our kidneys. So tell us how yoga can interrupt that cycle.
Well, I want to point to the research and the work of my colleagues Jim and Kimberly Carson, because they have spent 2 decades studying the impact of this mindful yoga program that they created on chronic pain. And what happens is that it can help rewire our brains in a more healthy way. When we become aware of how we are reacting, we might notice that certain emotional milieu can make the pain worse if we're stressed, if we're worried, if we're angry. So becoming more aware of the processes that's going on in our mind and our heart, coming back to the breath, all of this can impact our perception of pain.
Carol, how does yoga help emotional distress?
Well, yoga can help emotional distress by awareness. Awareness is really the key. Sometimes we feel distress and we're not really cognizant of what's going on. When we quiet down and sit on the yoga mat and look inward and connect with our deepest, truest self, we might notice, hey, I'm angry. I didn't notice that's what's going on. Or I'm sad. I didn't know that I was sad. It doesn't mean that if we practice yoga, we don't become angry or we don't become sad. We're humans. But we become aware of our emotions. And when we become aware of our emotions, we can feel what we're feeling. And when we feel our feelings, they move in waves. They pass through. So we can ride the waves, our emotions, rather than battling the waves of our emotions. I shouldn't be angry. I shouldn't be stressed. I shouldn't blah, 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 and all this mental chatter that just makes things worse. We can go, okay, hey, I'm sad. I feel that. I can be with that. Like everything in the universe, it comes in waves. It's peaks, and then it goes away. It's temporary. I'll get through this.
Well, pain is that way as well.
Exactly. You can ride the waves of pain in a very similar manner. And this is really the construct of the mindful yoga program that Jim and Kimberly have created. And they've studied this with low back pain patients, with people with metastatic breast cancer. And their research is so strong in the efficacy of this program for people with fibromyalgia. Did better than when the control group that was on medication.
888-472-3366. That's our number. Craig in Romney, West Virginia. Welcome to the People's Pharmacy. What's your experience been?
Hi, I've been practicing yoga since the 70s, and also I practice transcendental meditation. And I found that the yoga is a wonderful prelude to what I find is more powerful experience of transcendental meditation. And as far as pain relief is concerned, there have been studies that show that long-term practitioners of transcendental meditation have a 40 to 50% lower brain response to pain compared to the healthy controls. And in a study, it's found that those who learned TM after 5 months had their brain responses to pain also decreased by a comparable 40 to 50%.
Craig, thank you so much for that call. We really appreciate it. Carol?
Yes, there is a growing body of evidence to suggest that practicing meditation, which is one of the very important components of the yoga practice, can help rewire our brains in very positive, healthy ways.
And we go to Spartanburg, South Carolina. Tony, welcome to the People's Pharmacy. What's your story?
Hi, this is a story I share with people every chance I get. About 10 years ago, I was scheduled for surgery on a torn rotator cuff, and I happened to turn on the radio just in time to hear Joe and Terry Graydon say to a guest on the radio, "So, doctor, how is it that yoga can fix a torn rotator cuff?" And I just immediately stopped what I was doing and hung on every word. And the next week, I went and found a yogi who did the research based on your guest on your show. And within a week, the torn rotator cuff was gone. I mean, it wasn't gone, of course, but the pain was gone. And I avoided surgery, never had it, and it's been fine ever since. I just cannot believe how close I came to that long, difficult, painful surgery process and all the therapy that would have been involved in it, and avoided that by discovering something that was so easy and so pleasant and so simple, and has helped me really for the rest of my life. So I just wanted to thank you all again for that, and tell all of your listeners what a wonderful, tremendous, life-changing thing yoga can be.
Tony, thank you so very much. You know, Terry, my recollection is that we had as our guest Lauren Fishman. Does that sound right?
Yes, absolutely.
And he is a physician, a physiatrist, MD, in New York City. And I think he said he was driving in New York, which gives me goosebumps.
Makes you feel stress.
And he said somebody kind of cut him off. And so almost reflexly, he turned the wheel of his car very abruptly and tore his rotator cuff. It was that kind of a turn, and it was really severe. And he was feeling very depressed because he was scheduled for surgery, and he was also
missing his yoga.
He was missing yoga. He was such a yoga enthusiast that he felt like he had to do it. So he's big on standing on his head, and he had a couple of chairs so that he could somehow manage to do that even with his torn rotator cuff. And as I recall, his wife was coming down the stairs and she saw him and she yelled, "Lauren, what are you doing, you idiot?" And so he stopped, but in the process discovered that the rotator cuff no longer hurt. And his conclusion was that somehow a different set of muscles had taken over and he was able to lift his arm. And he is now kind of specialized in rotator cuff tears and how yoga can repair them. And Tony is living evidence that it apparently can work for some people.
Absolutely. And that is a wonderful story.
Yes. Where to next, Terry?
Well, I thought I would share an email we got. Judith says, I practice yoga and have off and on for 20 years. I currently have a strong daily practice ever since I was diagnosed with spinal stenosis. The symptoms started with pins and needles feeling in both my legs, and now I have a lot of pain in both legs, running up and down them and into my buttocks. I've been controlling the pain with acupuncture. So far, that's given me enough to continue my yoga practice, especially back bends and side bends that all yoga practice should have, but which previously I could not do because of the pain. My question is this: is it okay to continue to do mild back and side bends? Even though without the acupuncture I would have too much pain to be able to do them. I want to be able to move my spine and keep it supple. I think that moving it will help, or at least keep me from deteriorating like not doing yoga would do. Obviously, I don't do serious back bends, just small ones like cobra, up dog, and bridge. So, question from Judith. Do you have any advice for her?
Well, Judith, I'm glad that you found your yoga practice helpful. And yes, spinal stenosis, that narrowing of the spinal column, when people have spinal stenosis, they often do have the pain when they are doing back bends. It's called extension. The mention of the pins and needles feelings going down your leg is something that I would want you to talk to your doctor about. So in general, with spinal stenosis, my suggestion would be, as always with yoga, you want to challenge yourself, but you don't want to go to the point of pain. In yoga therapy, we do not diagnose, and that pins and needles radiating pain is something that I would recommend that you speak to your physician about.
It could be a red flag.
Yeah. A neurological workup, because that's a sign that the nerves are being
There may
affected.
be something else. But gentle, not going to pain, no big full wheel, may be safe, but talk to your doctor.
Okay.
Talk to your doctor.
Let's go back to the phones. Terry, where next?
Going to Clearwater, Florida. Oh, rather, actually Dunedin, Florida. Anne, welcome to the People's Pharmacy. Tell us about doing yoga with a walker.
Hi. Hello, this is Anne. I want to tell you my story. Actually, this was interesting. I was in a French class. I was walking with a walker. It was really difficult to get around. Actually, I was pretty much bedridden, except for just getting out for a couple hours, a couple times a week. And when I went in this French class, a friend of mine kept saying to me, you should take yoga, you should take yoga. And I'd look at her and say to her, you're crazy, I can hardly walk. I only get out a couple times a week. Anyway, every time I saw her, she kept saying, you should take yoga, you should take yoga. Finally, after a few months, I got tired of listening to her. I finally walked into a yoga class, and no one made fun of me. I couldn't believe it. Here I am with a walker. And, of course, in the beginning, I couldn't do barely anything. Really barely anything. After 6 months, I could do a tiny bit more and then a tiny bit more. After a year, I could do a lot more and then a lot more. After 2 years, I could do almost everything. Every once in a while, of course, the class is really quiet because everybody's following all the routines of the exercises, and class is really quiet, and you hear plop, as I fall. But no one stared, no one looked, no one made fun of me. I could do, after 2 years, I no longer had a walker. I went from a walker to 2 canes, then eventually to 1 cane. I could do almost everything that everybody did except maybe the tree. And
whoa, the tree? What's the tree, Carol?
The tree is a balance pose that's traditionally done on one leg, but the way we do tree in gentle yoga that I teach is, you can have 1 foot on the ground, your second foot on the ground. You can hold on to a chair. So a tree is a balance pose.
And that is a great story.
Thank you so much for sharing your story, Anne. We really appreciate it. And it demonstrates that you don't have to be young, you don't have to be thin, you don't have to be flexible.
You don't even have to be walking on your own 2 feet without aid. You can be using a walker.
And also, I admire the teacher of that class because nobody laughed at her. She was welcome. She was encouraged there. Yoga is not competitive. It is not judgmental. You're not looking around to see who's doing the best. You're on your own little yoga island. So that concern that people are going to laugh at me, I'm going to be humiliated, Anne's story is a perfect example of that's not a good yoga class. That's not going to happen. You will be welcome. You will be whole.
Now, I have to admit that I think I'm probably one of the most inflexible person I've ever seen, and yoga has always scared me. Just because you got to go into those pose things. Well, I've been taking a Duke Integrative Medicine stress reduction, mindfulness, meditation class with Dr. Brantley. And as part of this program, there was a yoga, mindfulness, meditation exercise, if you like. And I discovered I could do it.
Yay.
And it wasn't painful. It wasn't stressful. And I wasn't being judged on my silly poses. And they weren't even that much poses. They were really very simple exercises, if you like, on the floor. And I said, wow, I actually can do this. And it even felt good. Surprised the heck out of me.
So glad to hear that. That's a wonderful story.
Well, we're going to take a short break, but when we come back, we're going to take more of your calls, and we're going to talk a little bit more of how yoga can be helpful against pain. We're talking about mindful yoga today, and coming up, we're going to talk about the style of yoga and the yoga instructor that might be right for you.
If you're not very flexible, or if you have arthritis, can you still do yoga? Can you do it in a chair?
Wait a minute. In a chair? Is that even possible, Carol?
Well, how about that? We'll find out. Is yoga good for the brain?
Our lines are open for your questions about using yoga to promote your health. And also, we'd love to hear your stories. 888-472-3366. You can email us, radio@peoplespharmacy.com. Again, the number, if you'd like to join the conversation, 888-472-3366. And Carol, this is for men as well as women. I think a lot of people go, oh, that's just a woman thing.
Oh, absolutely.
All right. Give us a call. Again, that's 888-472-3366.
You're listening to The People's Pharmacy with Joe and Terry Graydon.
This People's Pharmacy podcast is brought to you in part by Verisana.com.
Verisana Lab offers home health tests that allow you to monitor your hormones and health conditions. you can take control of the quantitative assessment of your health and learn about male and female hormone balance, the stress hormone cortisol, leaky gut, gluten intolerance, or your gut microbiome.
Take a more active role in tracking your health and take 20% off your first order of a mail-in testing opportunity with the discount code PEOPLE. That's uppercase PEOPLE. To learn more, go to verisana.com. That's VERISANA.com.
Welcome back to the People's Pharmacy. I'm Terry Graydon.
And I'm Joe Graydon. The People's Pharmacy is brought to you in part by CocoVia, offering plant-based nutrients in the form of cocoa flavanols for brain and heart health. Online at CocoVia.com.
And by Kaya Biotics, probiotic products made in Germany from certified organic ingredients. KAYA Biotics.com.
Today our topic is how to relax into yoga to manage chronic pain.
Our guest is Carol Krukoff, yoga therapist at Duke Integrative Medicine and co-author of Relax into Yoga for Chronic Pain, an 8-week mindful yoga workbook for finding relief and resilience.
Before we go back to the phones, Carol, you talk a lot about stress, and these are really stressful times right now. I mean, it's not just the coronavirus. It's politics, it's finances. The stock market has been on a roller coaster ride. I guess I'd like to get a sense of this notion of riding the waves rather than battling them. What does that metaphor mean to you?
So riding the waves is a wonderful technique that is part of the mindful yoga program and practice. Very often when we encounter something that we don't like or that's unpleasant, we try to battle that. And that's like battling a wave or the rip current. You know, you're trying to fight it. It will take you under. But just like with a rip current, if you relax and you breathe, you can ride that wave and it will take you out. Just follow it along the beach. It's
easier said than done.
Oh, yes.
Terry and I almost drowned off the coast of Ocracoke Island in North Carolina because we were caught in a riptide.
Yeah, it's very
and we
scary.
kept swimming against the current. And it was a losing battle. We were going to die.
We weren't swimming directly in because we knew that you shouldn't do that. And so I was trying to swim a little bit diagonally in. But it turned out that was exactly the direction the rip was moving. Yeah.
Fortunately, some people saved us. But yes, we should have been riding the wave rather than battling it.
Yeah.
Let's go back to the phones, Terry.
Well, let's do that. We're going to talk with Gail in Sun City Center, Florida. Gail, welcome to the People's Pharmacy.
Hello, and thank you for taking my call this morning.
You bet.
I'm an osteopathic physician for over 30 years, but I've been doing yoga and meditation since 1973. I learned it from a book of pictures of an Indian man in postures, and I have a very bad back, which over the years has had some surgery, but the yoga has kept me going through having children, through medical school, through all the things that have happened in my life. I'm now 69. Many of my patients, I taught many of the breathing exercises to and some postures. It's helped me. My postures have changed in a lot of ways. When I was first doing it, I used to be able to sit on the floor in lotus position, put my infant son in my lap, push my body off the floor with my hands and become the human baby swing. And I can't do that posture anymore. I can't do headstands, but I still do yoga a lot. I do various postures, and I keep them in more of a meditative hold rather than a fast flow. I used to do yoga power classes for 2.5 hours. I don't do those anymore. So the bottom line is yoga has helped me and vicariously my patients in a lot of ways over the years, as well as meditation, both.
Gail, thanks so much for that We appreciate it.
We do. And Carol, I'm curious, your response, the idea that a physician would be embracing yoga seems, I won't say counterintuitive, but we think of a lot of doctors being trained in, traditional ways, and probably yoga is not part of the medical school curriculum.
Well, Joe, more and more physicians are embracing yoga, particularly in areas of chronic pain where it's very difficult to find therapies that are useful, and yoga can be so helpful. And I loved what Gail mentioned about how her practice has changed as she's aged. I just turned 66, and like Gail, I used to stand on my head. I used to do a lot of bendy poses. Now I have low bone density. I've had a heart valve replacement. My practice has changed also. But yoga, part of yoga is that concept of impermanence, that everything changes, and the ability to embrace the change and to be grateful for what you can do. I frankly don't miss standing on my head. I'm grateful that I can do side plank every morning. It's wonderful.
What is side plank?
Side plank is you're balanced on one hand and the other arm is up in the air. And it's a nice core strengthening pose, but it's a safe adaptation for someone with low bone density.
Carly emailed to say, would you please define yoga?
Oh, good question. So yoga is an ancient practice of holistic health that originated in India several thousand years ago. The word yoga means union. It comes from yoke, and it's a union of many things. On a very basic level, it's a union of the mind and the body through the breath. And at a deeper level, it's a union of the individual self with that sense of something bigger, of something greater.
Thank you. And we go to Kingsville, Kentucky. Elaine, welcome to the People's Pharmacy.
Hello. How are you?
We are well. We hope you are.
Thank you. I would just like to comment and ask a question. I belong to a senior center in eastern Kentucky, and they offer through the health department chair yoga. We are very few who take part in it, and I am trying to get others to do so too, because it's helped me immensely in terms of pliance and, your muscles feel better and everything all around feels better when you finish. But I was particularly curious about if there was any relationship between yoga and the improvement of people suffering from asthma and COPD. I know this was not my screening question, but I think that was more important for me because I do have asthma and COPD, and I'm wondering if the breathing that we do in yoga is beneficial. I tend to think that it could help those particular issues, and I was just wondering if your guests could comment on that.
Thanks for that question, Elaine.
Yes, there is substantial evidence suggesting that yoga can be helpful for asthma and also for COPD. There's some studies underway at this time. In our previous book, Relax into Yoga for Seniors, we have a section on COPD, and the yoga breathing can be very helpful because many people don't breathe with good efficiency. When you have COPD, it's very hard to get the used air and the waste products out. So when you do yoga breathing, particularly a form of breathing with breathing in through the nose and breathing out through pursed lips, called pursed lips breathing, it can help expel that used air, and it can be very helpful for people with COPD.
We actually have an email from Clarissa, which is relevant to this question. She says, I'm 65 years old. I have 500 hours focusing on the therapeutic use of yoga. I'm not a registered yoga therapist. I have severe COPD due to alpha-1, a genetic disease. I delved into research and designed a yoga for better breathing class and teach it on a regular basis along with ageless gentle classes. We not only practice pursed breathing, and other breathing techniques which help to lower stress, which lowers inflammation, which is an issue in chronic disease. But the asanas are all designed to work the muscles of respiration. We even do the yoga strap trick to help with posture during breathing. I've been told that my practice of yoga, along with my walking, has helped me maintain my quality of life, considering there's no stopping the progression of Alpha-1, at least at this time. I'm a true believer in the power of a responsibly designed yoga sequence and well-trained yoga guides to increase the quality of life. So Clarissa has found that her breathing practice, her yoga practice, has really helped her ward off, as it were, the progression of this chronic disease.
Well, let's go back to the phones, Terry. Let's talk to Brian in Allen, Texas. Brian, I understand that you're a police officer.
Yes, hi.
Welcome to the People's. You bet. What's on your mind?
Well, before I became a police officer, in my early 20s, 12, 14 years ago, I had a history of chronic spontaneous pneumothorax. My lungs would collapse. So I've had surgery. That's been corrected. But ever since then, I've had these random sharp pains in my lungs. Since then, I've gone to join the Navy. Now I have back problems. I became a police officer, so I had surgery on my right collarbone. I'm 31. I feel like I'm 60. And I've never done any yoga, so I was wondering, specifically talking about this mindful yoga, is that beneficial for these non-musculoskeletal problems, like my chronic lung pains, or is it more for the rotator cuff, the lower back, those kind of pains?
Yoga can be useful for conditions that affect any part of your body or your mind. So there's a misconception, I think, in our culture that yoga, when you talk about I'm doing yoga, it means you're practicing postures. And that's just one piece. As we've been discussing, other portions of the practice, the breathing, the meditation, and also the principles, the way of thinking, the gratitude, the contentment that are all part of the yoga practice, I think could be very helpful for you, Brian. And I would highly recommend that you find an appropriate teacher and an appropriate class, because yoga has become so popular in our culture that there's a yoga studio on every corner in some communities. And just walking into your average class with a teacher who may have, minimal training may not be the best fit for you.
So how does one find the right yoga teacher, the right yoga class?
Because if I walked into a hot yoga class with a lot of young people looking great, I would probably turn around and walk right out the door.
Yeah, that would not be appropriate. And it's not appropriate for people who have heart conditions, hypertension, that extra heat. It's become very popular for some people. But if you've got hypertension or a heart condition, that extra heat can put stress on your cardiovascular system. Not appropriate. So I would look for a well-trained, experienced instructor. Ask the instructor what kind of training they have, how long they've trained, have they ever worked with people with your particular condition. There's also a relatively new field of yoga therapy. As you've said, I'm a yoga therapist. It's only within the last 5 years that the International Association of Yoga Therapists has codified what that means, who can become a yoga therapist. But if you find a yoga therapist will have much more extensive training and working with various kinds of chronic conditions.
Terry, let's go back to the phones, this time to Greenville, North Carolina. John, welcome to the People's Pharmacy. What's your story, please?
Yes, hello. Thank you for taking my call. I love your program, and I particularly love this show. I got off the floor this morning and turned on the radio like I always do on Saturday morning, which is when I'm listening to it. And when I heard the topic was yoga, I kind of laughed to myself. But I got my introduction some years ago through Dr. Andrew Weil, and I've been doing some breathing and yoga on a repetitive basis. And it's so exciting. I got a lot to say, but the main thing I'd like to do is congratulate the people that have a daily practice, the discipline, because that's where the benefit has come for me, is the repetitiveness, doing it on a daily basis. And over time, which has been said, that, there's no part of the body or the brain that's really not affected in a positive way. Breathing things and the mindfulness, it's exciting. And, I'm happy that as I age, that I can adjust it to be age appropriate. And
we're almost out of time, John. I notice on my screen something about yoga getting you through surgeries. Can you briefly tell us what that's about?
Oh, absolutely. I just had my third shoulder surgery 16 months ago, and I use no pain meds, and that's just how I am. But to be honest, my rotator cuff failed. It tore again during physical therapy. But because I have persisted in my healthy practices, which includes diet, meditation, getting on the floor, that I've been able to overcome that. And you guys mentioned that, other muscles can take over. And, so I got range of motion. My pain is at a minimum. Life is good. And, it was difficult. I despaired for quite a while, thinking that, that I was going to be partially disabled.
Well, John, thank you very much. We are running out of time, and we're delighted to get your story. Bye-bye. I think we have time for one more call, Terry, and that may be Gretchen, because
she's been holding.
She's been holding a long time. Gretchen, we have about a minute left.
Good morning.
Hi, Gretchen. What's up?
Well, my question is cost and availability. I'm 60 years old, and I've spent a fortune on my chronic pain. I have scoliosis, bilateral L4, L5 bulging disc. Walking is my savior right now, but I've been to chiropractor, acupuncture, physical therapy, and now most recently to Maximum Living Chiropractor. But I've spent a fortune on all of this, and insurance doesn't cover much of anything, as we know.
Okay,
but cost and availability over 60 is not easy.
Let's find out. Carol, the cost of yoga is something that I think a lot of people like Gretchen would like to know about.
Of course. Costs vary, but many senior centers in many communities have yoga classes that are appropriate for older adults. Chair yoga sounds like something you might want to begin with. And at some senior centers, these classes are free. And at some centers, there's a nominal cost. So to practice in a way that would be cost-effective, that might be a good way to go. Classes, the drop-in class at Duke that I teach is a $10 drop-in fee for non-members. So it's not real expensive. If you're in a big city, a yoga class might be more like $20, $25. But go to your senior center.
So affordable.
Very affordable.
Well, that is just about all the time we have today. We want to thank you for listening and for calling in your stories. We're sorry we didn't get to all of them. We want to thank our guest today, Carol Krukoff. She is a yoga therapist at Duke Integrative Medicine, and she's co-director of the Integrative Yoga for Seniors professional trainings, designed to help yoga instructors safely adapt the practice to older bodies, minds, and spirits. She's an award-winning journalist who was founding editor of the health section of the Washington Post. She's written a number of books about yoga. Her most recent is Relax into Yoga for Chronic Pain, an 8-week mindful yoga workbook for finding relief and resilience. And as Carol pointed out, she is the co-author on that book, together with Jim and Kimberly Carson.
Lynn Siegel produced today's show. Pamela Alberta provided technical assistance. Al Wadarski engineered.
The People's Pharmacy is produced at the studios of North Carolina Public Radio, WUNC.
The People's theme music is by B.J. Liederman.
If you'd like to order a copy of today's show, you can call 800-732-2334. The show is number 1203. That number again, 800-732-2334, or find it online at peoplespharmacy.com. And when you're there, Tell us what you think about the show. Share your experience with mindful yoga.
You can also sign up for the free online newsletter. In Durham, North Carolina, I'm Joe Graydon.
And I'm Terry Graydon. Thanks so much for listening, and please join us again next week. Thank you for listening to the People's Pharmacy Podcast. It's an honor and a pleasure to bring you our award-winning program week in and week out. But producing and distributing this show as a free podcast takes time and costs money.
If you like what we do and you'd like to help us continue to produce high-quality, independent healthcare journalism, please consider chipping in.
All you have to do is go to peoplespharmacy.com/donate.
Whether it's just one time or a monthly donation, you can be part of the team that makes this show possible. Thank you for your continued loyalty and support. We couldn't make our show without you.